jumped on a plane yesterday with my brother Saul, and so wonderful to spend time with him on the plane, reminiscing, sobbing and crying about my granny. And yesterday in Jerusalem, I sat with my mom and my other brother Jonathan, and we wrote up some memories about my granny, and then my sister and Danya, our first cousin, and they added things in. So this is really a mixture of feelings and ideas from all of us about my granny. So for those of you who knew my granny, she was a teeny woman. Even when I was growing up, she was short. She used to take me up to here, and then by the time she was finished standing, she was up to my elbow. She just shrinking, but she was packed with energy and enthusiasm, and she was the most incredible person filled into such a small amount of space. As the rabbi mentioned this morning, she had a difficult childhood, and she grew up and her father died tragically in a milling accident at the age of 12, and even although she was the youngest of 3 siblings, she still contributed and helped her mother with the household jobs and chores and making her own clothes and cooking and helping out. So she started off, even at a very young age, through responsibility of being committed to family and helping out with her family. Her 2 daughters, Shoshana, my mom, those of you here know her as Rona, and Sharon in California. Remember her as being there and supporting them in all their sporting and schooling endeavors. She taught them how to sew and cook and knit and pass on her love of gardening, which has remained in the family genes even to myself and the next generation as well. Her strict morals and principled outlook on life and behavior was a guiding light to her daughters and how to bring up their families. A memory my mom shared last night was how when her and Sharon were young, very young, they used to dress up in their Shabbat clothes with their gloves and their hats, and my granny would take them to the, she didn't say it was Greatermans, but one of those department stores, and they would have milkshake and scones, and there was always a fashion parade with mannequins, and how this was such a tender moment of bonding with their mother. So that was one memory that my mom had. Her husband Philip died when she was in her 50s. Now I'm approaching that age myself now, and it's really young. Back then it didn't seem so young, but at 50 is really young. And instead of marrying and then starting her own new second life for herself, she really dedicated her life to being a super grandmother. She was not interested. She would say, I'm done with looking after sick men. I'm not interested in dating. No matter how many dates my father tried to set her up with, she was just not interested. Instead, she became a grandmother extraordinaire. Absolutely extraordinary. And there were 6 grandchildren, me and my 3 siblings, and Danya and David, and they were lived in California. And between those 2 places, my granny was pulled, and she spent time, and each one of us feel like we had all of her time. So, no matter what she did with us, she used to fly once a year to California to be with the Josephs, and around 3 months of the year, and where her presence brought extra stability and love to that family. And in South Africa, she spent every Shabbat and family holidays with my parents, my father, Harry, and my mom, Rona, or Shoshana, where her grandchildren learned the importance of kibbud avim. This is what we learned. Not a Shabbat went by or a holiday went by without my granny being included. And my granny was so much a part of my life and our lives as grandchildren, and even our children experienced her loving grandmotherly care. So she never missed anything. She was at all the concerts, the netball matches, the soccer games, the sports games, the recitals, the prize givings, the lift schemes, the family simchas, and she didn't miss a thing. And not only was she there on the sideline, I even remember the netball games where she was shouting at the umpire, "What are you calling that out for?" So she would enthusiastically be the first one on the dance floor at celebrations. And there was the regular Saturday night ritual fighting over whose turn it was to sleep over at Granny. Everyone wanted to sleep over at Granny. Whether any of her children or grandchildren were irritable, Granny would say, "You're either tired or you're hungry." And that actually is true advice. And while I'm remembering this now, the night before I got married, actually the week before my bat mitzvah, she said to me, "I don't think I'll be around for your bat mitzvah." And she merited to see my daughter's bat mitzvah and many other smachot. But the night before I got married, she called me and she said to me, "I want to give you the best piece of advice." So I said, "What is it?" And actually, here's Joshua about to get married, and I will pass on to you this advice from Granny Masha. She said to me, "Never go to sleep angry. You sort your fights out on the day and never go to sleep angry." So there's advice from Granny Masha, and that has been good advice. It has been advice that I've kept with my husband Ian, and been advice that I've kept with any arguments that I've had with anyone. Sort them out before the day is done, because none of us is promised tomorrow. And anyway, why go to sleep angry? So her children and her great-grandchildren fondly remember not only her attending things, but her being at their beck and call, playing endless hours of Taurami, Scrabble, cards, tennis, surfing in Musenberg, making pancakes, doing schoolwork, learning times tables, playing the piano, and her abundant pride, love, and dedication. She was a good sport, enthusiastic, and game to participate in all family activities. It was my late father, Harry, who lovingly called my granny Schwiger, which means mother-in-law in Yiddish. And everyone in the Vichy Park, I'm sure you remember it, in the Vichy Park community also called her Schwiger, and everyone knew her. And in Glen Hazel community as well. And even Rabbi Baumgarten today, he also remembers her fondly as Schwiger. And now she was always immaculately dressed, even up until her 90s and well into her 90s, and highly disciplined and presentable woman. Each night, and she was widowed at the age of 50. Each night, this was her rule and her tip to longevity: a piece of protein and 3 colors of vegetables, and after dinner, 1 square of chocolate only. She lived on her own until she was 90 years old, where she cooked, cleaned, and shopped for herself. She was fiercely independent until she could no longer take care of herself. I used to beg her and say, "Granny, just come and live with me. Why do you have to do all of this, take care of yourself? It's enough, you're 90 already, it's time to stop." But she wouldn't. Until one day she had a fall, and she cut all the skin off her arm, and now she needed someone to look after her. So eventually she came to live with me. And for me it was a huge privilege, because I felt like finally the tables had turned. That which she had done, not just for me, but for all of us, my siblings and my cousins as well, I felt it was now time to give back to her. And it was a real privilege. For 4 years she lived in my home, and not only was I able to take care of her, but she was still taking care of us. And my children were the beneficiaries of seeing what it means to look after someone who has looked after you all of these years. So that was a huge, huge privilege for me. And actually what was very difficult for me making Aliyah 8 years ago was moving her into Sandringham Gardens. And by this stage already she was losing her memory a little bit, but actually it turned out to be a blessing at that transition for me. When I moved her to Sandringham Gardens, there was huge guilt that I felt about leaving, and leaving my sister as well. And after her first 2 days, I came to visit her here, and I said to her, "Gran, how is it here? How are you settling in here?" And she says, "No, it's not too bad here, and the food's wonderful." So I said, "Well, how many meals have you eaten?" I've only had like 2 or 3 meals. She says, "What are you talking about? I've been here for ages." I'm like, "Gran, you've been living at me." So it actually was bittersweet. You know, she didn't really remember that she had lived at me, but that made it easier to leave. So when I did leave, it was heart sore to leave my granny. Lana lovingly looked after my granny on behalf of the whole family who wasn't here anymore. Dedicated, came here continuously to sit and be with my granny and to hear the same stories and the same questions over and over again. It was never too much for Lana to do that. Whenever they called, Lana was here. And it just goes to show that when you invest in people's lives, people only want to do things back for you. She lived to the age of 102, which is really a number. And the fact that we are all so broken, literally broken, to say goodbye to this magnificent human being shows that when you invest in people around you, create a legacy that will live on forever. And that is exactly what she has left behind to her 2 daughters, her 6 grandchildren, and her 17 great-grandchildren, who are eternally appreciative of the presence that she had and the effect that she had on our lives. And we feel blessed to have had her and to be able to have called her our granny. And just one thing that's not written in here, I'll say that my parents, when they used to go away when we were kids and leave granny in charge of us, that was like no easy thing because she was a strict disciplinarian. And one time when she was looking after us, we had a break-in into the house, and these 3 big men came into the house, and as kids we ran into the bedroom section, and I remember closing the door and slamming the door. My granny bolted out, and she was on the other side of the locked door, managed to get rid of one of these guys out of the house, even got a cut on her nose, but she was packed a punch, and she was there to always look after us and protect us. And today at her funeral, Masha feels so privileged that I was able to be here, just to see her on her final journey now. There were butterflies everywhere, and it was just magnificent. So we wish her on her way well to go and enjoy all the brachot and the beauty that she deserves to achieve in her world to come. Thank you.
Good. Well done.